Oh, hi there, and welcome to the new video here on my channel about dating guys with Asperger syndrome. So I figured I'll make a quick video about a statement that comes up surprisingly often on Asperger's forums online, and that's, oh, if only everybody was an Aspie, the world would be such a better place. Or if there could only be a place that I could move to, a society where there are only Aspies, I would be so much more comfortable as somebody with Asperger's. And, of course, on those forums, most of the audience, I guess, is pretty young. That's the only explanation for me why people would think that and not think it through, because, usually people with Asperger's are so analytical. But I, did want to get into that, and, let's imagine how that could look like. And to me, it's not just theoretical. It's if you truly believe that if everybody acted, very socially direct, without cues, if you cut out all those social subtleties and niceties, then if you truly believe that this would make the world a better place, then then you would feel anywhere in a relationship, at work, you would feel, well, why would I have to be the one who would just, really, at least in the back of my mind, then I would think, well, really the neurotypical people are the ones that should drop all this extraneous stuff that's not even necessary, and that's harmful, and it makes life so hard. So I think it's actually pretty important to understand why I think it would not work. And why do people post a statement like that? I have a little bit the feeling that's maybe, okay, an Aspie might not know many other Aspies, or they might go to a Dungeons and Dragons meetup or board game meetup and hang out with their friends there and joke and be very direct with each other, and it works great. But, that's already very narrowed down to people that share your special interests, that are very much like you. And of course, a world where there are only Aspies, everything in that world would have to work the same it does in the neurotypical world, even things like grocery stores. And there would be jobs that some Aspies then don't want to do, and that's, I think, where it starts. That in the real world, the real world is not a board game meetup. There's conflict, and Aspies have the same range of personalities, preferences as neurotypical people do. They get hurt like neurotypical people do. If somebody tells them something that hurts their feelings, they get angry just like neurotypical people do. Have the same range of feelings, attitudes, hobbies. I mean, you have very frugal Aspies and very Aspies who like to spend a lot of money, maybe gamble. You have some very scientific Aspies that are into astronomy, but you have also Aspies that are into astrology or kind of, woo-woo science or whatever. And so you have the same range of people, and the only difference is the Aspiness. So then if you start thinking, okay, if really people with such vastly different attitudes, personalities, if you throw them together, and if they're all Aspies and are very direct with each other, would this really work that well? And like with a grocery store example, there would be a grocery store like Walmart maybe in Aspie land, and then Aspies would have different jobs, and they would have to go grocery shopping sometimes at the same time as in neurotypical land, and then there would be this long line, maybe where the Aspie cashier has to ring them all up, and a lot of the Aspies are very frustrated to have to wait. And would a line like that at the grocery store, would that work better with Aspies, or the same, or maybe a bit worse, if they express their frustration directly as it comes? Interesting to think about, at the very least. But I think that's where it starts, that an Aspie might then argue, well, you don't, just being Aspie doesn't mean you immediately have to say everything you feel. And that's where it always starts. It creeps in that you want some social care and not to hurt other people's feelings. So maybe you don't blurt out, oh, can you hurry up a little bit, I need to go home, even though you're feeling that. And maybe an Aspie might very, want to blurt that out. Maybe it's not the right thing to say. Yeah, and then, personalities and attitudes, or not wanting to get hurt, or getting hurt just like neurotypical people do. Like, nobody likes to hear bad things about themselves. So an Aspie might feel, who posts that statement, oh, I wish there was an AspieWorld where I can just go up to a girl and say, I like you, I want to date you. Walk up to the girl on campus and tell her that, and then she can say yes or no. And I don't have to do all this, just dropping cues to see maybe how she feels, and then, as long as I'm not too direct, I might have a chance or whatever. Or going up to somebody and say, yeah, I want to be your friend. Do you want to be my friend? And of course, that's a little bit, human relationships are so complex, and they are not black and white. And I think Aspies themselves even know that. And then maybe the Aspie guy who imagines it would be so great to walk up to a woman and ask, hey, you want to date me? Maybe it would be not so great if that woman's also an Aspie and tells him, no, you're too short and too ugly, and the way you look creeps me out. Neurotypical-World people don't do that. They try to avoid hurting other people's feelings, and it's really practically everything is about that, to keep that social cohesion. There's an interesting theory that very early in human development, Homo sapiens lived together next to Neanderthals, and Neanderthals actually had bigger brains, and they were better at a lot of things, and they were much more advanced than people thought for a long time. So why did Homo sapiens win out? And some scientists believe it's because Homo sapiens developed these very these ways of acting socially, where they could integrate many different tribes. Even tribes that they'd never met before would have some ways of building togetherness, and that of course helped maybe against the Neanderthals, who also had tribes but had a really hard time beyond this very core group of a couple dozen people or whatever to extend their social reach. And that's how we ended up now, that Homo sapiens basically took over the world. And it's pretty amazing if you think about it, that there are now billions of people, and people are selfish, vicious, often super angry, impulsive beings. So how come we all live together, and for the most part it's pretty safe and peaceful? That it's so peaceful to the degree that it is really amazing, come to think of it. And I think that's where I think it's really valuable if, as an Aspie, you're really frustrated with all these social conventions that dropping hints, and that people communicate so much through body language instead of being blunt, then to think, okay, this is kind of really hard for somebody who has trouble reading body language and facial cues and stuff, but that kind of mechanism probably helped humankind be as successful as they are. And that's nothing against Aspies, because obviously they have other strengths, and I agree also with the theory that most scientific progress and that most of these very genius inventors over histories and scientists that they had that a lot of them were on the spectrum, so you need that too, but for thousands or millions of people to live together peacefully, maybe that kind of social stuff is important too. So Aspies get hurt just as much as typical people do. So at the very least, when they think, oh, I wish everybody was direct, then that they would consider how that actually would play out if you tell a girl, I want to date you on campus, and she tells you you're too ugly for me or whatever, and then you have to see that girl every day as you walk maybe across campus, and stuff. Open conflict like that really tears at the social fabric. And I think Aspies often don't realize, they feel kind of shunned, but they don't know why, and it's very often that inadvertently they tear at that social fabric, and people, neurotypical people, tend to then shy away from that because, this person is different, this person acts in unexpected ways. I can't predict that they will stick to social conventions. In fact, I can sort of predict that they won't, so I don't know what they are going to do. And that leads often that then the Aspie feels, well, seems like everybody's avoiding me or ignoring me or reacting negative to me, but I can't really tell what's going on because nobody really tells me directly. And it must be super frustrating. And maybe a wish then would be that everybody was direct, but really, for the fact that a lot of Aspies inadvertently, rub a lot of people the wrong way, it's actually pretty amazing that people with Asperger's often go through life and they actually don't experience much conflict and much, adults, insulting them, hurting their feelings. Of course, it depends on the environment, but that's all due to that social fabric. And even Aspies are so kind of still part of the social fabric somewhat, but one environment where that's not the case, of course, is high school, where Aspies get brutally bullied because people who are uncomfortable with them, uncomfortable with the way that they act different, that they don't seem to react predictably to social cues, young humans do the brutal thing and kick them out of the group and maybe even make fun of them and label them to make sure that everybody knows that this person is not welcome and is an outcast and acts different. And that's I think more how that's humans before they get that social filter. So I think in that Aspie world where even adults then would be very direct and not communicate through cues, and it would end up, everybody would, I think, get hurt a lot all the time. And you can disagree with me there, and really it would be nice to go up and say, hey, you want to be friends, hang out every week, but the thing is, social interaction or social or relationships with people are so complex, and they're never black and white, and they constantly evolve and they constantly change, and people gauge each other through these cues. And so if I meet somebody, if I've hung out with them 2, 3, 4 times, I might be starting to form a picture and I might know how I feel in this moment. But if that person would put me on the spot, do you want to be friends and hang out every week? That would be really scary because I would not know at that point. So I think Aspies tend to be very black and white. Either they like somebody or they hate somebody or whatever. That's just how I think it often really actually does not work. Even though in AspieWorld maybe people then would either immediately like a person and stick with that, or immediately not like a person and stick with that. But I think in that AspieWorld I would be most concerned about conflict. And I think it's an illusion to think that there would not be tons of conflict, because whenever you put a lot of people together with a lot of different attitudes and personalities, you just have conflict, and the social cues are just a way to resolve or gloss over that conflict without it ever coming to the surface, and it helps keep the peace, and it helps somebody to go through their day without ever feeling, at the end of the day, yes, I have a lot of enemies, or I have a lot of... Most people you would ask and they would say, I get along great with everybody, and that's because, you rarely have these outbursts, except maybe if you I mean, it's Thanksgiving right now, so sometimes you have people suddenly thrown together with very close relationships in one room, having to have Thanksgiving dinner together, and you know, if you force that, then these different attitudes come up, and then you know, you sometimes have these outbursts where people who are not strangers, who might not have that filter quite as much as when they would be hanging out with friends or whatever, then everything blows up and people get super uncomfortable. So yeah, but I'm rambling. So main points, yes, somebody who thinks an Aspie world would be great, maybe thinks of Aspies as clones of themselves, more or less, when really Aspies have the same range of very, very different attitudes, personalities, preferences as Aspies. And I would even say Aspies, if you try to pull an Aspie away from their special interest to make them do something else, it's harder even with a neurotypical person who's pursuing their interest often. Or you know, if an Aspie thinks that the dishwasher should be loaded one way, they get really, really distressed if there's somebody else who loads the dishwasher another way. And you know, even your partner that you pick, you will not find a clone of yourself. So in this range of millions of ways of doing things and attitudes, there will be things that are the opposite and that have to kind of be worked out. And yeah, us neurotypicals have this convenient way of working things out for the most part with cues where nobody ever really gets too direct and feelings don't get completely hurt, because this uncertainty that Aspies hate about all these cues and stuff, that's what keeps the peace, because you're never 100% sure that the other person just said something that was against you. If that person used cues and subtext, then you go like and you interpret, chances are, she doesn't really want to date me and she really is not so impressed with me, but maybe there's that little, chance that, maybe it was just the wrong time for her and she just got out of a relationship. So there's this remaining uncertainty that somebody else was against you, that's what keeps the conflict level low. And of course Aspies don't like uncertainty. They tell somebody exactly how they feel, and Aspies, I think, if they're on the receiving end for that, an Aspie woman, if their guy tells them, oh, I just love your fat rolls, and an Aspie woman would be just as hurt, I think, as a neurotypical woman. Even if the Aspie guy meant it in a positive way and meant to give her a compliment or just said something that was true and came from the heart, but I don't know, very interesting thing to think about, but I see that almost every day posted on the forums where Aspies go like that. All this neurotypical stuff is they are the dysfunctional ones, that they don't, that they aren't more direct with their feelings, but I think there's a very good reason for things to be the way they are, and it's a product of basically 10,000 or more years of evolution. So alright, so this is just my opinion about that. Certainly would be nice for people to have at least a retreat for Aspies to, I wish all Aspies had a way to get away from the neurotypical world and maybe be with other Aspies that share their special interest and hang out in a group. That might be a nice thing, but maybe there are often in any kind of given city not enough Aspies with a certain interest, and again, special interests vary, and some Aspies are fundamental Christians and some Aspies are atheists, and if you start throwing them together, then Aspie land would not be as happy as maybe the Nirvana imagined. But alright, so that's my rant for today. And thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking with you again really soon. Bye.